Hey everybody, this is Carl. I got a new TV show spoiler reviews. A couple of them I'm gonna be doing in a row, and then I got one comic book movie, all in the theme of the spooky season. I'll be doing two videos dedicated to Castlevania. Now, Netflix Castlevania series. I just wrapped up Nocturne. Luckily, it was just 8 episodes. I covered that late last night into today. Then, a couple of days prior, I got through all of the first 4 seasons. A couple of them being mini episodes of Castlevania. So I'm covering the first 4 seasons, and then separately Nocturne. And the first 4 seasons, I'm rolling all into one video. And I'm just titling it the Trevor Belmont Saga. And yeah, like I played. Well, the only Castlevania game I ever played was Symphony of the Night. Once as a kid, but I didn't even get that far because it was a side scroller. So it's, there's certain parts I just couldn't figure out getting by. And I tried to, I think it was a year ago or maybe 2 years ago, I tried, because I re-downloaded the game on my Xbox Series, Xbox One. And it's like, once again, it's like now like kind of know better now. Because back then we didn't have like walkthroughs to figure out like how to get past certain things. But still, man, it was, unnecessarily difficult. I won't say difficult. I mean, you can figure it out, but it was just still kind of like a pain in the ass. So, but not gonna go off on a tangent, but it's just Symphony of the Night was the only one that I remember playing as a kid because I could not figure out when I was a little kid. I remember liking the art style of the game. Mostly because I was playing as Alucard, son of Dracula, and I just love the way he moves because it's like a after image kind of thing. Of course, I didn't know, how to describe the look of him moving so fast that he leaves, images behind himself. But yeah, I just remember the look, that, and then the look of Alucard was really good. I was like, I love the depiction of him, and I love the depiction of how Netflix captured him. And it's one of the few things that, when it comes to like adaptations of video games, Castlevania and Detective Pikachu are probably like the, other than of course there's the Sonic movies, are like so far at the tippy top of great adaptations of video game movies. Oh yeah, and then of course more recently the Super Mario Brothers movie. And but man, it was a lot of trial and error over so long before people finally got it right. And I argue the only reason they probably got it right because people, in my generation are in those writers' rooms and director's chair or illustration rooms. All those people who grew up like in like the more recent rebooted Mortal Kombat movie a couple of years ago. I liked it, and it's like, it's more true to the spirit of what the game that we grew up on. So that's how I feel with the Castlevania series. Top-notch work. And the animation style is just phenomenal, especially like when it comes to the fight scenes in all these both Castlevania and Nocturne that I've seen are done very well. So yeah, the first 4 seasons is, tackling, which I think was smart because they can't get everything, but it since they're dealing with Trevor Belmont, which is at least a couple of generations past the original Belmont, that we're focusing on, and the games involving him are uh was it Curse of Darkness, Symphony of the Night, and Dracula's Curse. uh so all those, kind of, roll into one, which I think is smart because the character is involved in this particular 4 season story, have been involved in each of those 3 games. So that's what they kind of focus on. And just to cover very quickly, you can easily look this up because Castlevania is one of those video game franchises that has like a very rich history. Basically, we're focusing. Each game focuses on a Belmont particular family member or ancestor, and this family has been, charged with, dedicating their lives to taking down supernatural creatures, more often vampires, or even more often Dracula, because 90% of the time, not all the time in the Castlevania games, but 90% of the time, it's, he's, not every generation, but it's like once every few generations, somebody, try to resurrect Dracula, and it's up to whoever Belmont family member that's alive has to, because each child of a Belmont is trained to make sure they're prepared, and they train their children and their children, so that way no matter what generation comes up, whoever's there is ready to like take on whatever threat that comes about. But basically, the tippy top patriarch, where this all sprung from, Leon Belmont. It was like 1079, something like that, where well, at least in the game, that Belmont was friends with this, because it was friends with this guy, Malphus, I think is went by, and they were part of the Crusades. I think it was the first Crusade, I think. And well, the story goes, they kind of took bits and pieces of those old games, because this is like an old game, and applied it to the Netflix show. But basically, Malphus fell in love with this girl named Lisa. She died, or at least in the game fell ill, and the allegiance he pledged towards God, who didn't save her, he became disillusioned, and went then pledged loyalty to darkness or the devil, and then ultimately he through dark magic became the, at least like the original, I wouldn't say the original vampire, but for all intents and purposes, he became the first vampire or vampire, and he changed his name to Vlad Tepes, aka Dracula. And Leon, who used to, in the game, used to be friends with him, now realized what he turned into, and the girl he fancied got end up being bitten, and before she turned, he used this whip that was enchanted in order to make it complete, to be able to supernaturally take out the forces of darkness. It needs a sacrifice of somebody, a soul that was tainted or something like that. Since he was still a good person, but hasn't fully transitioned into a creature of the night, uh, while she was still cognizant, he had to sacrifice her. She was willing to, not let her soul go in vain. She died at the end of the whip that enchanted the whip to be one of the most iconic tools in the Belmont family line. And of course, there's more upgraded or variant forms like like the Morningstar whip that you'll see in the Netflix show that was incredibly powerful. So Leon wasn't able to fully destroy Dracula. He either got away or something transpired. So he dedicated his life, and then he made this vow that his family will be dedicated to eradicate Dracula and any forces of darkness that's plagued the earth. So he eventually, in terms of the game, and then also in other various stuff, he had a kid, trained that kid, then that kid had a kid, and so on. And then we go down to Trevor Belmont, which is the story we'll be tackling here. I love this freaking character. And he's the first Belmont that I remember, because other than Leon, I could for the life of me remember any other Belmont by name. Try as I might. I have to actually look it up, but Trevor and Leon's the only two that I actually remember by name. But so as I'm going through this, and they really need to do another Castlevania game. It's been such a very long time since the last one. I think the last game was in the mid 2000s or something like that. I think at the latest. Because it's definitely around. I gotta say, it had to be around either PS2 era or the 360 Xbox 360 era, something around that time, maybe. But anyway, as I was going through the show, because this is like my second or third time going through like the first 4 seasons of Castlevania. This is really good. As I was going through this, I can't help but not think about the Assassin's Creed franchise. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Assassin's Creed like that, but I love the premise, because it's essentially like a familial line kind of story where there's these two rival groups, the Assassins versus the Templars. And the Templars are these they're evil, but here and there there's always some layers to it beyond just black and white stuff. But they're normally like aristocrats or high society types that try to gain control of this apple of Eden, and to try to control the world, while the assassins try to prevent all that and get a hold of the apple. And of course, we're following this one guy in modern times, and there's this machine called Stratego or something like that, where there's a machine where people, it's kind of like used for the people going for like general public. It's kind of like a vacation type of thing you can sign up for, where you can go inside this machine, and depending going through your DNA, you can travel back in time in like memory wise to any point through your ancestors and live out the life that they lived, but you have to stick to, because you try to go off script, the whole thing jumbles up and resets you back to the previous save point. So you got like Ezio Auditore and yeah, you know uh, all these different assassins from his bloodline, going up to modern day, which I say we should make like at least one game where you can just play as assassin in modern time, or better yet, uh it doesn't have to be so far as too ancient of a past. You can like be an assassin, go hook up yourself into a machine and travel back to the 1970s or 60s or even the 80s, because that's technically the past now. That's ancient history. I don't want to say ancient history, but it's still history. That should still count. It's not modern no more. That'll be interesting. But I say all that to say that these two go kind of like hand in hand in terms of like, familiar bloodlines and fighting an adversary each, different kind of generation. Super interesting. Anyway, so in the Netflix show, because I'm covering season 1 through 4 here, we followed Trevor Belmont, and he is, usually with these stories, there's usually like every once in a while one Belmont left. Well, in his case, he's the last living one, and he's kind of like, down on his luck. He's drinking, and his family name is being cursed because superstitious people assume that the Belmonts were responsible for all the horrors in the world because why they springing up so much, and they just somehow just shows up to deal with it, but they leave a lot of maybe destruction or death in their wake, and not, I want to say they're looking for praise, but they're not appreciated for it. So Trevor at this point is disillusioned of where his life is going, and he's not he doesn't care as he probably used to as a little kid, because when he was a kid, Belmonts was probably like looked upon as like heroes and respected. But the story starts where Vlad Dracula Tepish is living in solitude, and I really love the fact that when you're doing like a story about Dracula, you have to have him impale people, because he's Vlad the Impaler. Historical wise, he is very known to have done that. He had look up in history, Vlad Tepes literally had forests full of impaled corpses as like a big giant warning sign to stay out of his land, because he was Prince of Wallachia in real life, but in a lot of cases in different fiction, he is Prince of Wallachia, and he's doing whatever he can to protect his territory from Ottoman Empire or anybody who's tried to invade his territory. And walking through a forest of impaled victims is one hell of a keep out sign. And he was rumored to have been the first vampire and the most dangerous one. And then there's like a rumor where it's like, because he died on the battlefield, but they said he was buried, but nobody ever found his corpse. Somebody tried to, I forgot where I got it from. It's been many years where I've found this kind of bit of information out. But after he was buried, I think a couple of days later, somebody tried to raid his tomb, and they did not find his body. And I don't think to this day nobody knew where the heck his body was. So somebody tried to raid, whatever jewels he might have in his coffin or tomb or whatever. They opened it up, he wasn't there. So there's always been that kind of like weird, like what the hell happened to his body? Uh, anyway, so in the show, he's living a life of solitude in his castle, the Castlevania, that actually moves via this mechanism inside his orb, where he uses it to. And I like the use here because there's actual science. He's lived a very long time, so what people think of, the whole old adage that magic is just science that we don't understand yet, kind of crap. But no, just like I think after the first Thor movie, I think people really got sick of that freaking notion. That's when I started hearing people get very sick of that whole notion. Oh, science is just magic we don't understand. No, there's science and there's freaking magic. Okay, we're not too obtuse to not understand the difference at this point, unless you're dead, brain dead. But he actually has different sciences and like the mechanisms and chemicals and what you might consider potions, exactly like chemistries and everything like that. But then he actually has a magic mirror that comes up in shards where you can look through it and talk to people like FaceTime, essentially. I guess you can say like FaceTime would be considered magic back in like Victorian era or something, but you get what I'm driving at. Anyway, he kind of lived a life of solitude, doesn't want to be bothered. Then this woman named Lisa comes knocking on her door. A very like a spunky girl, where she is like, my name is Lisa, I want to be a doctor, and like I know you have like stuff here throughout the ages that could possibly help my people. And of course, Vlad, he just disinterested. He's just want to cut himself off from the world. He doesn't really care. But then she got like that spunky attitude where she's just like because while he's moving around in like quick speed and hiding in the shadows and stuff like that, talking with her, and she says like well, you're very rude, like it's been a few minutes and you haven't like offered to take my coat or offer me a drink or anything like that. He was like, well, if I'm drinking from you, and she just shows like I'm not bravado, but just like just honest respect. Because when like he made some kind of crack about garlic, and she made a point where it's like, oh, I did have roasted garlic earlier, I'm sorry, it was the only thing I had to eat. I hope that's not rude. She was generally like, hey, I didn't want to be rude in your freaking presence. It's like I'm a guest, and blah blah blah. And they start hitting off because like he generally liked her attitude. It's like he lived a very long time, so from what I've gathered, it's like because you cut yourself off of humanity, you tend to get bored, and like you do tend to get lonely, and any genuine human interaction is welcomed. And she he asked her like if I offer, like he showed her room full of like lab equipment, and he's like and she something like because he asked like, what can you offer me while I'm offering you the world here? And she says like I can have you get back into the world again. It's like understand people, or at the very least tolerate them, or at the very least stop putting them on sticks. So there's like a healthy banter. So fast forward a good like 20 years later or so, while Vlad take her up on her offer about traveling the world as a man, walking and seeing the world and understanding people. The local church around that time got wind of her dealings with like the dark arts, but it was just science and just to help nurse people instead of using very archaic methods that does not work with curing simple ills. So she was charged as being a witch and colluding with demons, and she was burned at the stake. And while she was literally burned at the stake, she pleaded out to the ether, well, like, please, you don't do this, don't blame them. They literally kind of like whole Jesus thing where it's like they know not what they doing. But it's kind of like the reverse effect of what we see from Jesus. Well, not necessarily. I mean, if you know the story about how like when Jesus was crucified on the cross, and you say like they knew not what they did, and as soon as he died, there was like a, I don't know, it's like a, what was like a thunderstorm, earthquake, some kind of like weather thing that sprouted this kind of like with like God weeping his loss of his son kind of situation, or whatever kind of scenario, whether you believe or not. But it's just kind of like as soon Vlad found out, he uses magic, actual magic, not no science pretending to be magic, actual magic, to turn his like the flames into the face of himself, and like ask him like, what did you do to my wife? And this grief he experienced, because he truly loved this woman. They actually had like a son, Alucard, which we'll see coming up. He is like, okay, yeah, I tried doing things her way. I tried to empathize with you people, but time and time again, y'all keep showing y'all true colors and just destructive group of species. So y'all took someone that I love from me, so I'm gonna like take everything from you. So you got 1 year to pack yourself and get the hell out of Wallachia, because in 1 year I will be back and I will raise this whole freaking place to the ground. And as when I first watched this years ago when it came out, and because they, I won't say like all of them, I'm pretty sure it's like a fair amount of people did leave, but there was still plenty of people there in the city. And he showed back up, and he literally says like, I gave y'all 1 year, and what did y'all do in that 1 year? You celebrate the day that you murdered my wife. And so he released a hordes of demons, these night creatures, out into the city, where it is killing every night. They keep coming back, killing a bunch of people. Horrific. And it's like if that wasn't me, honestly, if I see like a whole pillar of fire, a face of on fire, after the local church priest, who turns out to be like a freaking psycho, burned this entity's wife at the stake, and said like, yeah, 1 year to get the heck out of this city. It's like, I'm packing my stuff up and completely moving as far on the other end of the freaking country as I can. Lo and behold, there's a freaking like group of monsters every night just wrecking crap. And of course, Alucard tried to stop him, but he was alone and he didn't have the strength needed to really take down his own father. Despite him understanding his grief and he wants to grieve with him, and tells him, look, why don't you go after the person responsible, not going the other way and commit utter genocide. And there's a back and forth where Dracula's like, anybody could have stood up and said something. They chose not to, so they're just as culpable. And he, not understanding that, for all intents and purposes, the church, especially around that time, was law. And if they say like, oh, she was bad, she was doing this, they would have been inclined to believe her despite the lack of evidence or whatever. So, but he doesn't care. So now we got Trevor Belmont, like roaming through the town, seeing, because oh my god, it's like it always bothers me when I see a movie or a TV show and something happen to little kids, especially like babies and stuff like that. It bothers my soul. It really like I cringe and bothers me because like I hate something happening to children. But it's like you see a demon literally got like a corpse of a baby in his mouth, and it's like, oh my god, it was hard to watch. It was a brief moment where it was like I kind of wish they didn't. There's enough gore involved in this show that they don't need to add that. I kind of wish they kind of skip stuff like that. You don't even need a hint at it either. Just assume that like, oh, there's gonna be probably children living in this city. I'm pretty sure a lot of them are gonna get hurt too. But anyway, he is gaining information about what's going on, that he's passing by this old man who's part of this group called the what do they call those people? They're kind of like monks. Speakers. And the speakers are being blamed for what's going on because they, because the church are blaming them instead of taking ownership of what they're doing. Typical. But these speakers are basically a group of kind of like monks where they don't actually physically catalog every language, but if you know the story of like Tower of Babel in biblical history, where humanity spoke only one language together, and God then kind of like it's a longer story, but basically he broken all those languages up into different languages that we know of, so that way we won't be able to communicate as a one unit. So the speakers, are against something like that, where they speak all in one language and don't catalog it, but they keep it, they tell stories essentially. And a few of them actually learn magic. They're spellcasters, and we learn about this old man's granddaughter named Sypha, who become like a major player in the overall story. Because she controls like kind of like elemental type of magic, fire, but only like fire, lightning, and water that shifts into ice and wind, I guess. But no earth, weirdly. But anyway, but they're peaceful people that like monks. They try to help when they can. They go. They're crap, not hermits, but it's kind of like nomads. They're kind of like nomads. So Trevor not want to get involved, but his, he's still like, got the heroic nature in him, and he sees these other religious guys, part of the church, harassing the speaker, because they're just bullies under the guise of, godly men. And Trevor literally sees them carrying knives, and he made a point of like, those are thieves' knives, and it's kind of weird for a person of the church to be carrying one of those. So he just, he deals with those guys to keep him off this old man, and the old man takes him to his little hut where the other speakers are. And he's telling these guys like, hey, you guys got to get out of here. They blame you guys for all their atrocities, but they say they can't go because his grandchild, it wasn't specific about what kind of grandchild, but his granddaughter Sypha went down to find this legendary hero that will help stop all this madness in Dracula, that's supposed to be underneath like the city, but technically it traverses underneath Castlevania itself. It turns out to be Alucard, being essentially locked away while Dracula does his thing. Anyway, Trevor makes a deal like, okay, if I get your grandchild and bring them back, you gotta get the heck out of here. So he goes down there, fights off this Cyclops that turns people into stone, and upon his death, anything that was turned to stone is immediately revived. And so luckily Sypha, who was turned to stone, didn't crumble or crack, in any kind of way like other people who was turned to stone was. But he managed to get her back. Then he was summoned, despite being excommunicado from the church, his family excommunicado from the church. He was called upon by the priest who caused all this mess. Says like, tell him like, hey, yeah, you just get out of town, then your excommunicado is lifted and stuff like that. So Trevor, not realizing like, oh, this guy's a freaking nut job, because he basically just wants the power of the church itself. He doesn't even look upon the Pope as his superior. He's like, well, I am the church kind of attitude. So as soon as the sun goes down, the night creatures come back, but thanks to Trevor and Sypha, who planned out a battle strategy to contain the incoming horde to one section where they can easily take care of them. But before all that happens, one of the demons shows up in the church where the priest is, and the priest like, you guys cannot enter this house of God, this house of God. And the demon points out, normally that would be the case, but God's not here with you. God don't love you anymore, but we love you. And pretty much drink his skull, because essentially you hear the slurping sound. Clearly, like you think he just bit off his head, but he took a nibble and started slurping his brains or something. I don't know. But clearly, like, the whole place is deconsecrated at this point, because given the fact that what this dude had caused obviously got in with that. So Sypha and Trevor deal with all these hordes of monsters, and they end up falling through these catacombs, where they end up finding Alucard and teaming up with him to finally take down his father, because he realized, okay, he's not going to listen to reason. and for my mother's sake, because she would not want this, I got to take down my father. Instead of like, actually having like a conversation with this guy, because clearly he's grieving, because, you know, that's, a lot of therapists will point out, like, that's a drawback of letting people in. You will feel hurt when losing them. And, but the reward of actually loving someone, that's the whole line, well, it's better to love and lost than never to love at all, kind of thing, really, like, made made a point on that kind of thing with Dracula, where it's like he's grieving, he's hurting, and it's like something that he essentially would not have cared about, prior to meeting this woman. But now that he spent some time with her, he loved her, he married her, he had a kid with her, he shared a life with this person, and just to get that stripped away, somebody as ancient and powerful as him, that is probably like a monumental thing, in a monumental hurt he's feeling. But instead of like taking a moment with his son and grieving with his son and comforting each other in that loss, he decides to just burn the freaking world. So while all that's going on, we meet up with Dracula's side of things, where he is holding court. Essentially, he's making a plan on eradicating the human race altogether. And there's like he got at least a few vampire generals. One of them is some kind of Viking type of guy named Godbrand, who's just loudmouth, crude dude. Then you got this, woman, Carmilla, kind of, I think is based off like a real life, well, real life, but like a infamous kind of woman, I think in Victorian times, where she was bathing in like the blood of a lot of women just to try to keep her youth. I'm pretty sure that's how it goes with this woman named, like, kind of Carmilla in history. Let me see. Yeah, it's based off of Bram Stoker's story. Uh, uh, 1872 Gothic novella. Uh, um, yeah, this premise is like a infamous vampiress, based off of Bram Stoker's story. Anyway, so she has big ambitions of world conquering, but it kind of butt heads to, even though Dracula is technically her superior, she has, big goals of worming her way into discord, causing discord among his side of things, while making plans, because she has 3 other sisters who because who's like, one's like a big burly type of woman, and this other woman she's with is I don't know if it's black or just Indian or something. I'm not sure. That's more of a strategist. Well, not strategist, but take care of logistics. And then there's this diplomat, younger lady that come into play in like the 3rd and 4th season. But she, Carmilla, just like, long time ago got turned by a guy. She was pretty much like in subservience to this dude, and growing up is always all that she knew, where she kept being under the boot of another guy and another guy and another guy. So she just, at some point snapped, killed her vampire master, and pretty much like took over his spot. And she just like essentially just wants power at this point, because she had no power all through her life and immortal life. But she can't take on Dracula directly. She has to do some subterfuge, and that comes into play with these two human guys named Hector and Isaac. I keep wanting to say Oscar Isaac, but Hector and Isaac. And Hector and Isaac are probably the only close friends of Dracula that come on board with eradicating the human race. Although Hector believes that Dracula wants to just do a little bit of culling, where it's not every human population, but reduce it to a smaller population where it can be controlled. Because both of them grew up in like horrendous times as in their childhood, where human compassion was almost non-existent to them. Hector, I guess couldn't make friends, isn't very social like that. And these two are force masters, which in the Castlevania universe means it's humans that has unique magic where they can turn dead corpses into night creatures, things like that. Depending on the forged weapon that they end up, choosing. Hector has like a hammer, while Isaac has a knife. Hector, found solace in, undead pets. And his parents, did not like that. Didn't, care for his own son. They said awful things to him, like I knew there's something wrong with you as soon as you were born, and blah blah blah. Then later on in his life, he met up with Dracula, who befriended him. Then Isaac, was sold to this like crusader, this man who took him in off the streets. Well, not a slave, but treated like a slave. Took him in and just used him, and then like physically abused him. As like, and like who told you you can read and touch my stuff? And he ends up whipping him, and then until Isaac snapped and killed this guy. And then later on, Dracula showed up and befriended him. But unlike Hector, who, as Isaac pointed out, has a kind of like a childlike mindset, so he can't always be told the complete truth. Where Isaac, is not too disillusioned with like the harshness of the world, and him and Dracula are the most complete honest with each other. And so he understands, like, yeah, we're going to eradicate all humans, all of them, gone, don't care. And he ends up, flogging himself when he trying to focus the mind, but clearly this, like, I guess, pain is something like he is so used to help him focus. It's kind of like just he's really, these are traumatized guys to like a deep degree. So essentially, these are his war council, but all these vampire generals has to answer to Hector and Isaac. So Carmilla manipulated Hector into going with a plan on attacking a particular area near the coastline, just to avoid anybody trying to escape via ship. so they can take the time with going inland. But they all think that but they're starting to, especially Godbrand, despite his crude nature, he's starting to like question things a bit. Like, hey, like, what we're gonna do in terms of food? Because if you eradicate all the humans, then there wouldn't be anything left for us to feed on. And of course, Dracula, normally not known to like being questioned or saying no to. And it's like, I love the voice actor for Dracula. Him and Trevor Belmont has, like, well, all the voice actors are incredible, but Trevor Belmont and Dracula probably are the great voice actors. And funny enough, the voice actor for Dracula is the same voice actor from, if you remember my review of the animated film Dante's Inferno, based off the video game. The voice actor for Dante is the same voice actor for Dracula here. It only took me this go around to come to realize that, oh man, it sounds similar to that to Dante. You know, that's, you know, James Callis, yeah. So and then like Carmilla, you know, got some stones, metaphorical stones, where she's like just said what everybody else was probably was thinking, where it's like you know, why didn't you turn your wife? And it was arguably a legit question, but probably like an easy answer. He did not want her to turn to, she was like essentially perfect the way she was. She's not one of those, you know, people that he just flippantly turn into and just become some kind of, you know, mind slave to him or whatever. She had her own mind, her own, you know, way of doing things that he respected and loved. That's what he loved most about her, that, you know, she spoke her mind and spoke true, and it's not something he wanted corrupted or, you know, manipulated. But ironically, she's the one that, you know, while they was curious about why he did not turn her into a vampire, it is her that ends up turning him into a human, because he, you know, shown empathy. You know, he willing to travel the world and as a human to understand people. It probably, you know, obviously didn't take, given the fact that what happened to his wife, but the person that he found out about this from was this woman that Lisa treated with her illness, that she was leaving flowers at the home that she was staying in. Dracula is the one last bit of human kindness before he's starting to burn the freaking place to the ground. He told this woman, like I'm gonna do this one last simple kindness for her. Take your family and get the hell out of here, because I'm gonna burn this motherfucker to the ground. And he just ports out of there. It's like in a pillar of fire, just booms, like gone. It's like, get your heck, like, get your family, get the heck out of here. It's like, because I'm pretty sure, you know, I'm pretty sure there's remnants of people who lived through this atrocity that happened through the course of, I don't know how long, well, at least, you know, weeks. You know, she, you know, and her family survived to tell a tale kind of situation. But Hector was easily manipulated, and as a poor guy is, you know, it was a simple mind. He's not an idiot by any stretch of the imagination, but it's some truth to what Isaac stated, where it's like he, and I won't say childlike, but it's like a more optimistic or sensible way of looking at things. But you know, that's something that she, you know, messed with. She's good at that. And so Isaac Isaac and Dracula know that, you know, something's up. But Dracula ultimately doesn't really care because everybody's starting to understand what Dracula really is going to do here. That's why he's just like, because he was raged and passion when the moment of what happened to his wife occurred, and throughout that entire year. But as things carry on, he just like he just does not care. Do whatever. I don't want to say do whatever, but just do what I say. Like, as long as the humans killed, I don't care. But it's just like, that's why he ain't fully answering a lot of these people's questions about, like, after we, because Goblin points out, it's like, this is war. War has some kind of order to it or point to it, but this is, we're just flapping about. This is not like a war. They come to realize Dracula's deleting himself, but taking a long way of doing it, because he wants to, he essentially just wants to die. He wants to die and be with his wife, but he's not going to do the deed himself, and nobody's powerful enough to actually do the deed. So he'll just do the long, slow way to the grave, and that's what people are starting to come to realize. So once Trevor and the gang come to realize, okay, we need to understand how to get inside Dracula's court, and how to defeat him and know our enemy. So they end up going to the Belmont hub, where they keep all their, it's kind of like their bat cave, where they keep all their tools and tricks of the trade throughout the years of taking down supernatural creatures. They make it inside, and of course Alucard, not like, oh god, this is highly uncomfortable, because he's basically walking through a mausoleum dedicated to taking down creatures like him, because he's seen all these like old bones of taking down vampires. And of course he's half vampire, given he's half human, so that's why he's like doesn't have that same kind of monstrous urges, unless you really tick him off, which is almost hard to do, but probably not ideal to do. So you see little by little that Trevor and Cypher is getting close, but they each one love poking jabs at each other. It's very funny. But Carmela's plan it starts to bear fruit, because Isaac ends up killing Godbrand once he decides to stupidly voice he's kind of like want to do something to Dracula in order to like get the reins of this whole entire plan. Isaac kills this guy, and Carmela tells Isaac, or tells Hector, like, hey, you better come with me, because now that my plan's going to full motion, because all of her armies that is waiting in the wings across the bay after Dracula moved his castle to her supposed strategic spot. It's her people at the ready to like whittle down Dracula's forces. But then Lisa, using this magic mirror inside the Belmont hub, gain control of the mechanism to transport Dracula's castle nearby, so that way they can do like a surprise attack. And this is where like things really like, because Trevor found his like Morningstar whip, and you know, it's like the video game. It's like, oh, you found like a new weapon to use, and everybody's just like, you know, these three walking inside Dracula's castle and just taking on a bunch of vampire generals and soldiers, and it's awesome. And the music is playing, comes from Symphony of the Night, and the like I said, the fight scenes, the music, like the art style, everything's on point. And I think the reason being why everything seems so on point, because this stuff is not cheap in what is being used right now, is because the first two seasons were just 4 episodes each. So I think it was very smartly played, so that way they have enough funds to put the money towards this great animation and the musical score and all this other stuff. So when they're like, everything's really start popping off, oh my god, it's just stunning. It's almost similar to what you'll see from like Star Wars Visions or the Spider-Verse films. That level of awesome animation is like right on par in my opinion with that. So these three are starting to take on Dracula, and of course Dracula takes Isaac, throws him through the magic mirror into the desert. So he's like you really would do anything for me, because he sees Isaac as like probably like the truest friend he had, and knowing that he will sacrifice his life for him, he doesn't want to, and he sees something better for Isaac. He tosses him out into another part of the world safely in this desert, and you know, destroys the mirror so that way, you know, he can't run back. So he takes on Alucard, Belmont, and Lisa and Sypha, and the fight is amazing. And I love the part when Trevor is, you know, trying to like, you know, punch at Dracula. It's just like he's unfazed, and it's like trying to punch a wall. It's just like not landing anything, and it's just like Dracula easily can just kill either one of these two humans, you know, with a swipe of the claws. Like I said, it's like it's at a point where it's like he's just not like he reached a point where it's just like, I really don't want to even put in a freaking effort. I can kill you, but I can just take my time with it, a kind of attitude. But just like you can tell what his mind is right now, where it's like, I can't even freaking be bothered, honestly. Because like I said, he's at the point right now. But then things really, you know, get serious when like, okay, Alucard is really like, you know, laying into his father, because it's the only one he can actually match with strength. And the fight between these two is almost like Dragon Ball Z level stuff. I will mention that again when I get through Nocturne. But these two, you know, taking a fight, crashing through each room until they land in Alucard's old childhood room. And I love this scene. The scene is played out so perfectly. It's acted so well, where it's just like Alucard. And because when you're in that heat of the moment and you're angry and flustered, and you know, especially when it comes to like a family member, and like you're just, you know, as soon as he took a breath and, you know, like a sudden shock hit him, it's like, this is your room, because he pretty much closed it off. But it's like, this is your room. And he sees all these old toys and pictures and stuff like that, and he just says to himself like, my God, Lisa, I'm killing our boy. I'm killing our boy. Something that we made together. And it's like we painted, I remember painting his, we painted his room together. I remember we made these toys for him. And it's like he come to realize, as Alucard coming in with a stake, and he just like understand what's gonna happen. He just let it happen. It's like he, you know, Alucard shoved the stake through his father's heart, and it's like there's a callback to a few scenes earlier before the, you know, the fight even started, where it's like, you know, Alucard is like father, Dracula's like son. There's a little more disdain in their voice, like we don't even need to talk, because like clearly you're not going to see my side of things and vice versa. But at this point now, where it's a little bit more softer as they speak, when they just more sad what has to go down and there's no way around it, and it's like, son, father, and it's like, it's sad, but it's something that had to be done. So Dracula's dead, and Alucard is obviously sad because he doesn't, as he stated earlier, it's like, no, I don't want, like, I'm not going to be ready for this, but I know it's got to be done. And so he now has the moment to actually let this sink in, and he's just like overcome with emotion and sadness. This is not something that he took pleasure in at all. And Cypher then, once all things said and done, Cypher and Trevor decided to go find Cypher's people, and Trevor asked, Alucard, hey, while you're, maintain your house, look after the Belmont stuff here. Like, I trust you to make sure everything is like, looked after. And then, of course, Carmilla starts, taking Isaac down to her homestead. Of course, he's hesitant, but then because you're talking about being treated like an, animal, man, and you'll see this play out even more with Hector. She, is verbally abusive, and then she proceeds to not only, put a collar around him. She proceeds to beat on this man to the point of like, trying to break his will. And then you'll see later on where she and a group of her soldiers have him by a collar and force him to walk via leash until they reach her and her sister's castle. And then you get these 3 separate stories moving forward. Oh no, 4 separate stories here. We'll have to go one by one here. Okay, because they eventually all intersect. For the most part. So, Cypher and Trevor are getting closer, and they become like a couple. And they spend, because Cypher has this whole notion of, using their skills to be heroes, because she has like whole, thing of like going on adventures and saving people. Because now the Dracula's gone, we can really like, stop all this, the bad guys and everything like that. She's got this whole like swashbuckling kind of attitude that she wanted, some adventures she want to fulfill, kind of stuff. She got a taste for it now. So that's what they've been doing. They end up coming upon this local village where that they come upon this mystery here, where there's possible rumblings of some kind of demonic things happening. They end up coming upon this guy named Saint Germain, this kind of like this scholar guy is very like a very nobility type of talk, but kind of like a shyster type of dude, where he has a goal of finding the infinite corridor, which is kind of like a portal that goes to any place, anytime, anywhere, trying to find his girlfriend that he years ago had like a thing with, and they had also trying to find this place. She's inside, and he's trying to find his ways to get back to her. That's his goal. And he goes upon this village because there's this deconsecrated church nearby. Of course, it wasn't found out until later it's deconsecrated, but there's a local church nearby where these whacked out monks with one leader in particular who has a very glassy eye look to his face, and he's worming his way inside in order to be able to go through all their textbooks in order to find out about more about this door and where to because it is never stayed in one place for too long. And there's this judge who runs this town, and Sypha and Trevor find out these weird signs is being carved in random places, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. Jermaine ends up finding out through one of the textbooks that these armbands these monks are wearing is like a alchemical symbol for sulfur, which is also by extension the sign for hell. And he notices like a very old book where it's like, hey, like, what's up with this book? This is like a book like this shouldn't be in a church, period, let alone like it doesn't even matter if the place is run down. It shouldn't even be in here among all these other books. So he ends up finding out that there's this demon locked up underneath this church, and it's purposely locked up, not for any good reason. It wants to be locked up and got inside these monks' head in order to unlock a doorway to hell. Because these monks, just like in a game, there's always these sub cult group where they trying to always revive Dracula in one way, shape, or form. So once they come to realize what these guys are planning, the judge rally up a posse of soldiers, which honestly they fight like they like farmers. Honestly, they look like they should be like decently trained, but they find off all these monks, and then the doorway is open and all these demons are coming out, and an awesome fight happens. Saint Germain opens the door and realizes, okay, I gotta be inside in order to properly close it. I need to be inside anyway. So he helps them so that way, like, Trevor and Sypha can take down all these demons. The judge ends up getting mortally wounded by that head monk guy, and he tells the head monk, like, go down by, by the river, and there's like an old, apple tree, and you'll find like a way to escape out here. And of course, the monk listens. Judge tells Trevor and Sypha where to find this guy, because he's like, yeah, I killed him, don't worry. And it's like, I got a last request, please burn down my house. And they wonder, like, why do you need the house burned down? But they end up going and find like the monk dead in a pitfall trap, and there's a bunch of spikes and everything like that. And underneath the monk, there's these old small bones. And they wonder, like, why these bones are so small? Who are these bones? They end up going inside the judge's house. They didn't burn it down right away, and they find a secret door where it's like a trophy room with all these children's shoes. And come to realize, because you see this happen earlier, this kind of seeded earlier, where this guy is pretty much a serial killer in a way, where he's like, it drives him crazy when all these kids keep running through his town, so he ends up tricking these kids. I don't know how he never, nothing ever was brought up about, like, somebody's missing a child, and there's no I won't say missing persons or wanted posters or something like that. I wouldn't say that, but it seems like there's no wandering parent or crime parent or something like that catching Sypha or Trevor's eyes about, like, man, I had a son, but for weeks he's been missing, and you know, I'm just concerned, and it's like blah blah blah. We got none. I was kind of wish like that was kind of put in, because it seems like why would there's no active parents, searching the place, or you know, asking anybody who walked into the place about, hey, have you seen a boy who roaming around when he came in? Like, nah, like we didn't see nobody. Things like that. I kind of wish they had that. But they kind of realize this guy murders these children and literally keep trophies of their shoes. And it's like, holy crap. And so they then burn down the place. They get a carriage. They take one of the carriages. Of course, like the old hell portal that was opened by these sigils that was carved into various places in the town by these monks in order to, get like a sacrifice by sacrificing anybody inside these homes just by automatic stuff, and use their souls to open up the portal. So this whole place is for the most part decimated, except for maybe a few stragglers that left. So Trevor and Sypha leave the area, and now the whole sense of adventure is not all fun and games. And Sypha comes quickly to realize and got disillusioned about the whole life of a hero type of thing. And Trevor points out, well, like we spent the last couple of months living out, the life that you wanted, but now you're living out the life of mine, showing that the life of a Belmont isn't going to be all fun and games. There's going to be times when there's going to be hard choices, there'll be difficult situations. You're not going to leave happy. And then, of course, some time went on, and they have their little bickering things. It seems like the whole ordeal kind of hit them pretty hard, which they end up coming upon another investigation about this isn't going to be the first time where somebody try to resurrect or try to get Dracula back. And they end up going all the way back to where it all started, where this priest ends up burning Lisa to the stake and meeting up with this chick that was part of this world court kind of situation. Clearly she's lost a bit of her mind, and she freely admits it, where she keeps like the king and queen of the city dead corpses in like a secret area, saying like, oh well, their spirits will eventually come back because they just resting, and woo woo. Clearly she's not having it. All right. Then we meet up with these two other vampires, one Russian guy and this other guy named Varney, voiced by Mark Hamill, who's just loud mouth, like, do you know who I am kind of attitude. And they end up taking these guys on, killing the Russian dude, and Varney ends up, who turns out to be working with Saint Germain, which he will pop up later. But this is all part of like a big machination here, and they end up following him through the portal, which ends up in Castlevania. Now let's go to Alucard. Alucard, for these couple of months while Sypha and Trevor is doing their thing, he's pretty much living a life of solitude, not unlike his father. But I'm not sure if his father ever had like moments of losing a bit of his mind from solitude, but I think probably not, because I think Alucard Dracula before he met Lisa welcomed the solitude. He preferred it, but it's still like a detriment, because he, you can see that he probably craved the true companionship, and not somebody who's just seeking his favor or just running in terror or making some weird assumptions about him kind of situation. Alucard literally made dolls of his friends in order to talk to. But then here comes these two Japanese people, like these young adults, who come from northern Japan. That was this small area that was run by one of Dracula's generals from his court that ended up getting killed by Alucard and the others. This Japanese vampirist who was running things. But Alucard points out, oh, don't worry, she's dead. So your people are gonna be fine. But they desperately need the stuff inside Castlevania in order to be able to truly combat any potential people who trying to fill the vacuum, because they know there's gonna be somebody like that. That's why they travel so far away to get here. And they wanted to be properly trained in order to defeat vampires, because seeing how this vampirist able to take on their finest warriors without any effort, they need to be able to deal with that efficiently. And so Alucard decides, okay, because I'm lonely as heck, so I'll definitely train you guys. But of course, he doesn't want to show them every corner of the house, and also the mechanism that transports the house is essentially broken, given the fact that, you know, Cypher tried to force it via different kind of magic and not controlling it properly. Hey, Jose Peak, have I watched Nocturne? I just wrapped up Nocturne. I'll make a different video after this talking about Nocturne. I'm trying to make sure I get things separate, because they are a separate adventure altogether. But he showed these two the Belmont area, so that way they can see all these different types of weapons in order to be able to utilize and train properly in order to go back and handle things. But of course, they overplaying their hand by asking, like, oh my god, like, you know, oh, can you show us, you know, this, and can you show us that? And it's like, dude, calm down. Like, you already said no, you're kind of pushing it. Yeah, Alucard was, I love the look of Alucard. Alucard is probably like the best drawn. It's like, I love the look of it, like a lot of the characters, but he is honestly the best drawn. And it's like a, just like in like the art renditions via the game, where he's kind of like a porcelain type of, this is like true, when people talking about how, like, you know, white people generally have like porcelain skin and blah blah blah. No, this is part like true porcelain skin, and like he is like perfectly drawn, and I love, like, they capture that so perfectly in the show. Alucard, white Alucard, I was like, wow. Yeah, but I'm not too bothered by it because it makes sense. But it's, I don't know, it's kind of like a different shade of pale compared to his father or other vampires. This is maybe because of his half blood heritage, they kind of give like a different sheen to it. I don't know. But these two people like end up ultimately betraying, and honestly, kudos to the show, because honestly, they like, they didn't shy away from certain things where it's like, you're showing the good things on Netflix, honestly, and you probably should have parental guidance on Netflix in general, because there's certain things that, you know, young kids should not see. It was like Symphony of the Night game. It was, yeah, Symphony of the Night. Like I said, they borrowed heavily from Symphony of the Night, but also Curse of Darkness and there's a third one. So Curse of Darkness and I keep blanking on the third one. No, Dracula's Curse and yeah, Curse of Darkness. Yeah, Dracula's Curse, Curse of Darkness, and Symphony of the Night. So they came to Alucard's bedroom, and seemingly just having like a three-way with him. Because when I first watched this years ago, when it first came on, I thought, wait a minute, ain't these two brother and sister? After rewatching it, I was like, oh no, there's no word or hint that these two are brother and sister. They're just two people that know each other. So they end up having like a sex with him, like, oh my god, this is like they really going there? Oh, they going there. Oh, wow. Okay. Uh, so and it's like I appreciate that on a level where it's like it's not. I don't want to use the word glorified, but it's not pandered to. I will say that because it's a way to showcase bisexuality or homosexuality in a more natural way without making it so like, hey, look how progressive we are kind of attitude that always drives me freaking bonkers. And like I keep mentioning as a prime example, like the CW or is notorious for that, making like a whole, parade out of it somehow. As you know what I mean, if you watched enough of the CW back in the day, you know what I'm talking about. But it's just like it's a natural thing. It's just don't advertise it, just let it happen naturally. uh uh if you watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine, that's another good example of showcasing, a person who is bisexual and a homosexuality in a very nice I don't think like it was like nice, but it's like natural, a very different N word, a natural progression, or natural way of doing things in order to make sure it's like, it happens. Yeah, it's a thing. Move on. Don't get your undies in the butt just because two guys are kissing or whatever. It happens. Moving on. But then they end up like tying them up in like weird like rope magic and stuff like that. Attempted to kill him. I was like, dude, what the heck? I was like that definitely took a turn, and they trying to kill us and like without good explanation. But clearly they trying to like they got, I guess, impatient. They want everything in this freaking place. They want to just like use everything they have in this place in order to pretty much like combat any potential threat in Japan. But Alucard broke out and killed these two, and it breaks my heart. I was feeling for him because it's like he's literally on the. You can see where his mind at. It's like not only he was like alone for a couple of months, and he's dreading the fact that he's turning into Trevor Belmont, but on top of all that, it's like the first two people that actually showed up at his door that seemed genuinely like friends to him ultimately tried to portray him in the biggest fashion possible. It wasn't even like a knife in the back in the kitchen while he's cooking or something. They literally brought him to bed in hopes of like subdue him and then take his life, and he had to defend himself. And then he's crying on the floor of his childhood bedroom. And it's like, dang. And then on top of all that, because these two essentially, broke his trust on that deep level, he ends up turning into his father, despite how he pointed out earlier that, his mom didn't like the fact that people call him Alucard. She named him, something else, Andreas, Alexander, something like with an A. But she didn't like the fact that people call him Alucard because it's like in the opposite of Dracula. She didn't like the idea of him having to fall into his father's shadow, be his own person, things like that. So, but ultimately he ends up doing something with his father. That we can't always not end up doing things that our parents did. He ends up putting these corpses on stakes in front of the building as like a keep out sign, because like fine, it's like since because he doesn't want to end up like his father and not like use this as an excuse to like harm random people, but like he said to his father, like go after the person who did it. So he decided, okay, I'm gonna just stake these people who actually try to hurt me, and he put them out in front of the castle, and it was like Jesus. But then later on, some a dead writer, shows up in front of the castle with a note attached to his arm saying that, there's a group of people 20 miles away knowing about Alucard and wishing for his help from these night creatures that's starting to pop up, and 3 nights in a row, getting worse by the night. So he ended up showing up, and he meeting this lady that he obviously got interested in, who's like the head person of the entire village. And of course he shows up in always the most awesome way. Alucard is probably got the best fight scenes. If I had to give it to anybody, it's probably Alucard who got the best fight scenes out of the entire franchise so far. But of course, there's also Trevor and Sypha gets their moment. And of course, I watched Nocturne. I just want to say right now, Richter Belmont, I like the fact that, like, I want to say right here, because I'm going to bring it up in a different video, but I like the fact that Richter fights, every Belmont should fight differently from their predecessor every time you see them. And I hope they kind of, the people behind this kind of stick to this notion, because Alucard is pretty much primarily just, he resort to fisticuffs if he has to, but he utilizes all these whips in a particular fashion, and all these different gadgets in a particular way. And probably a little agile, I guess. But Richter, he uses a whip too, but he's not shying away from using fisticuffs. I can't help but think about Dragon Ball Z as I see when Richter fight. And I was like, okay, because he comes from the line of Sypha and Trevor, so he got a bit of magic to him because of his ancestor. And so he utilizing fire and ice and lightning on his fists and hands in order to be able to, like, just bah, 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 bah. And it's like, I can't help but think about Goku or Gohan when I see this guy fight and utilizing elemental magic in his fists. It's, very unique. And I kind of wish, if they keep, knowing Netflix, I doubt like they're going to keep continuing with Castlevania all the time. But if they do, or if somebody else picks it up, each generation or different ancestor or predecessor, I should say, of the Belmont clan, each one that shows up as headlining a particular saga, they should be able to fight in a unique way that differentiates somewhat from the predecessor. I think that's the way to go. That makes them unique, and it's not, pink by numbers in a particular way. Anyway, so, where was I? Oh yeah, so he shows up at the village and he sees Saint Germain, and you see how Saint Germain showed back up. And it turns out that when he went through the Infinite Corridor, he met up with this woman who gives him this key and say, like, oh, you want to be able to control alchemy and the Infinite Corridor, then you need to make a particular sacrifice, and you want to meet, be able to find your love. You need to, throw away any notion of morality and, true sacrifice and everything like that. So he shows back up to the real world, and he and you see him how he met up with this woman who doesn't have a voice, which is weird. You showing him his past, you should have some kind of voice actress involved, but it's a very beautiful woman, even though he's like, she should be like, what, maybe in her 30s. Well, at the time when you met her, he could have been in like late 40s, early 50s, given the fact that he has some gray hair. But they end up searching through finding the Infinite Corridor, end up finding it. She ends up trapped inside, and that's his whole ultimate goal, trying to find her. So now he's, making his way into this village, going through these machinations in order to get back to find Castlevania, so that way you find the anchor point of where Dracula died, so he can working with Hector and all these other forgers and Varney in order to go through these machinations, or to bring back Dracula in order to get through this achieving, like, perfect alchemy. So Alucard, because of Saint Germain's, suggestion, like, okay, clearly, this village ain't got the defense needed in order to protect these people. So we should probably go to your castle, who probably have like a better set of defenses, which everybody's inclined to agree. So they all go back to the castle and fighting off all these demon hordes, while at the same time you see inside one of the caravans these demon mistresses are fusing together this body, this corpse, through parts of a man and parts of a woman, and you'll see why they are doing it in a minute. So most of these villagers are and Alucard fighting off these creatures, and they're bursting their way inside the castle. And Alucard, realizing that every time somebody's dying, that there's these stones that's forcing the spirits of these dead people into Alucard's childhood room. So him and the woman go there, and they see that Saint Germain is building up enough power through these souls as being like essentially sacrificed in order to get into hell, open the door to hell, and force the souls of, because you see like Dracula and Lisa are in hell. Given the fact that like when I first watched this, I'm like, man, it's like, did she have to go to hell? Maybe it's because she technically did work with Dracula, who's infamous and killing tons of people, and fathering and siring a kid together. I guess God wouldn't look too fondly upon that, but directly to hell. She was genuinely a good person. That's pretty effed up. But they're both in hell. You dragging their souls out of it and forcing it inside this this corpse body that's being made, and it's all Varney's plan. We'll get to Varney in a minute. So now we move on to Hector and Isaac. Well, we'll start off with Isaac. Isaac is pretty much going essentially like almost like the Odyssey, or just like a learning experience as he's traveling, because he realized that Hector betrayed them, and his goal is to find Hector and kill him for what happened in Castle Dracula. Along the way, he ends up encountering just a-holy people, and despite him saying like, don't bother me, leave me alone, I'm not bothering nobody, but of course they kept poking the bear. So he uses his magic knife, turn them into night creatures, and essentially forming a gang of protection as he's traveling along the way. And he ends up on this boat with his captain, pretty sure it was voiced by the late Lance Reddick. I'm pretty sure it's Lance Reddick. And it's thanks to this captain, where it's like he's learning a little bit. Is more to humanity. I mean, because he's not some kind of sage or wise monk or anything like that. He's just like a traveled person that's seen almost everything, and a worldly traveler. And he points out to Isaac, yeah, there's some pretty shitty people in the world. I've done some shitty things too, but if you eradicate all humanity in the world, then you also eradicate all the good that's here. Because playing people have made a lot of things that you would have enjoyed, like art, music. There's pleasure in the world thanks to the goodness of humanity, and there won't be no more of that. It all cease to exist. Because he points out examples to Isaac. It's like, the person that gave you the map and all there's like shards of glass that give you the magic mirror in order to, FaceTime essentially with people. It's like they didn't have to do that. of course it wasn't all the way to goodness of the heart, but they didn't give you any trouble. Gave you like so. There are times when people won't give you respect back that you gave in return. That tends to happen. Can't live a life without that occurring at some point. Sometimes you got to roll with it. But more often than not, you come across people that you do good to them, you respect them. They in turn like give you that in kind. You just have to be open to that possibility. And it's kind of like in the way with Dracula, and it comes to shutting himself off from the world. Like, sure, you shut yourself off the world to prevent any possibility of you getting hurt, but you won't experience love either. And that's the drawback of opening yourself up to people. Sometimes you get hurt. And the same thing Isaac probably has to learn is that sometimes you got to deal with asshole people. That happens. It's not nice. It'll never be nice and never be right. You'll never always get justice when somebody did wrong by you. But, you got to go through life and, roll with the punches. So Isaac ends up coming across eventually before we get into that, he ends up talking with his night creature bug thing and is the only one that actually can speak coherently. And you can understand, like, as you go through Nocturne, that on rare occasions, night creatures can actually communicate, depending on, like, it's never really explicitly why. Maybe it's the unique person, maybe, or something. I don't know. The unique soul involved. But this particular night creature can speak to Isaac, and he's getting his perspective and, and to be able to communicate along the way. And it's just like this journey is like changing Isaac, a bit. So he ends up going to this massive city where he come to realize that there's this crazed king or emperor or whomever that, took people and mind controlled them through magic. And like, you talking about like an impressive scale of things, man. He has, they're all intents and purposes are dead, I guess. But he mind controlled them and turned them into just like a big ball of just people, and he's just chucking them at Isaac. And this is like an impressive feat of scale and animation. Honestly, Isaac is, just turning, like all these, people, as much people he can into more night creatures for his side of things, so that way he can, they can fight for him or block them or at least take the brunt for things. So he can like barrel through this tower, and he's going through all this tower while these swarm of people trying to crawl through. It's almost like if zombies can fly or something like that. And he's, fighting, and like, as he's cutting them with his knife, you'll think they're immediately turned. But I guess he has to will it to actually do that. But it's just like, you'll think every slice will turn these people, if it wasn't a killing blow, turn these people into extra night creatures. But he's making his way to the top, and he finally kills this fat emperor guy and deal with that. And so he eventually, after he lays siege to his entire place, using this massive magic mirror that this dead emperor guy had, he takes whatever amount of like night creatures he have and jumps through it in order to go through Carmela's castle to this, intercedes into what Hector's going through. Now let's get into Hector. Hector being dragged into this castle, thrown in a cage, and you see Carmela and her sisters, and they had dreams of, expanding their empire, and given the fact that, okay, we need extra soldiers, essentially cannon fodder in a way that way we won't deplete too much of our vampire forces. So we need Hector in order to make more night creatures. And the other sisters, especially the one that's like the more soldier mindset, military one of the group, points out, and everyone else agrees. It's like, and I kind of find it funny because they seem a little bit more sympathetic, not too much, but enough where they got to point out, it's like, you know, why would he help us? Given the fact that Nycris only followed the orders of the Forge Master, why would he help us after you make him betray his friends? You beat him and made him and dragged him, made him walk miles upon miles in the cold, butt naked here. I don't think he's, you know, inclined to help do you any favors right now. And I chuckle every time I hear that line, and it's like, that's a massive point, because you're not, clearly wasn't thinking. Supposed a strategist, the fact that you just, you know, did all that, and at the very least, you know, after you beat him, because just, you know, knowing he's human, can't have him drag him through on a leash through this dead winter of snow. It's like you just didn't give zero fucks. And so that's where the younger lady, the more diplomat one, forgot her name, Lenore. So you talk about, like, you know, Stockholm syndrome type of stuff, but it's just the way you got to pay attention to the way Lenore talks, because he's really like, you know, a class level of manipulation. And people like to throw around like, oh, he or she manipulated me. No, if you look at this is textbook manipulation, where she is to listen to the chosen words of what she says to Hector, where it's like, you know, come on, boy, come on. It's just like, do you want some berries? Like, no, you know, I have some berries. Of course, she talks nice. She gives, I mean, is some level of empathy she has, but it's just the way she's going about doing it is demeaning, where she's treating him like a pet, and she's not seeing him like a human, and she's using chosen words in order to get inside his head in a particular way, and treat him nice. Oh, I'll do a little bit for you, like, you know, what you want. You know, I'll give you some shoes. I'll give you like a nicer cell where you got like a bed and a desk with a book, so you can actually read and be treated with some level of humanity. And like, oh, like, unlike Dracula, we actually have aspirations of calling the human race, where we don't kill all of them, because what Dracula did was pretty much insane, because that's not something we want to do. But she eventually get disillusioned after seeing that Carmilla power hungry nature, where it's just like, oh my god, this woman is batshit fucking crazy, because she just got, you know, abused and belittled and used by whatever horrific man that was above her for many possible centuries. While the other two ladies, what's her name, Morana and Striga, was out on a campaign in order to get more dead corpses for Hector to turn to. Well, no, they're just expanding the territory, at least, you know, playing strategic, pretty much playing risk in a way, and try to, you know, lay claim to more territory. And of course, once Isaac starts laying siege at the castle, they arrive just as the battle is ending and realizing, yeah, you know, we only got like a little forces left, and they already little by little like figured like their heart's not into this whole world conquering thing as Carmilla is, because they realize her stuff is just a scheme. It wasn't like an idea. Well, it wasn't like a plan. It was a scheme to keep playing with that words, but they realized, okay, we'll just go somewhere else. You know, this whole plan is kaput, and they realized that Carmilla is dead, given the fact that Isaac, in an awesome display of fight, and that's an awesome fight in itself, Isaac goes toe to toe with Carmilla, and Carmilla, not giving him satisfaction, kills herself and goes off in a big explosion. So she felt that and assumed that Lenora is dead, given the fact that she's like the weaker of the four, and so they just go off together with whatever forces they have, and this is the last you see of them. But yeah, when Isaac finally meets up with Hector, because the only reason Hector is forced to build these night creatures is because Lenore, in a just like with Alucard, in like a night of passion with Hector, tricks him into kind of like a devil's deal. Because if a guy is ever in like a particular position with a woman, you'll say just about freaking anything. Like, I remember my ex, like I forgot, there's been a couple of things I agreed to with my ex that I initially didn't care for, but it's like, I'm not gonna say it here, but it just like, the term "caught with your pants down" takes like a different meaning, and so a guy will say just about anything in that kind of position, so you can't really hold it against us. But so it's like, say you'll be mine, I'm yours, and then like she put this little rope ring around his finger, pretty much sealing his her and her sister's control over him, so that way he won't try to turn his night creatures against them at any point. But Hector, not an idiot, he may be like kind of naive in certain ways, but he's not an idiot. So through the weeks while he was here, he strategically placed certain markers and things, because he was still working with Saint Germain in secret, in order to get help, in order to figure out a way to plant certain markers, so in case he has to make an escape via the tower, which he ends up giving to Isaac in order to get up there to the top to fight Carmilla, in order to make his escape that he was planning pretty soon. But Isaac eventually showed up, not upon the request from Hector, not attacking Lenore. He expects and is he expects retribution from Isaac, because he did, it's like, I've been working with people in order to bring back Dracula, but I know that you want to take your revenge out on me. I'm ready. I'm like, I know what I did was wrong, but I try to make amends, but I'm ready for your punishment. And Isaac started this, wanted revenge, but now come here changed man, realizing like you was manipulated, and Dracula ultimately wanted to be with his wife, so we're gonna just let him rest. So Hector took Isaac's knife, cut off his finger, so that way the control of those night creatures is done. But he thinking that he don't have like a life with Lenore, because he actually had feelings for Lenore and she did him, but she resigned herself not to just be another, be a pet, essentially. That's how she would probably view it. And I feel bad, because like, I really wish Lenore didn't have to die, because she just, if you ever watched Blade 2, which I will do a spoiler review later on in the week, just walks out in the sunlight and just because she's never seen like the sunlight before, and want to see what's all that's cracked out to be. But she did legit enjoy it, as much as she's talking about how she enjoyed like the moonlight and the starlit sky. The sunlight isn't a pushover either, and she just let the sunlight consume her. And I felt bad, like, dang, I really want those two to end up being together. But that's the last time we see Lenore, Hector, Isaac, Striga, and Morana. Then everything starts converging together, where Varney turns out to be the Grim Reaper, Death, who in the game has, for the most part, every now and again, is part, well, in the game, there's been times where like the Grim Reaper is under the thrall of Dracula, and he's responsible most of the time in trying to resurrect Dracula. But in the show, he's realizing what Dracula has done with causing all this utter destruction, he feeds off the death, but only humans were able to actually reach inside of hell to pull somebody out. He doesn't have that power. So he wants Dracula and his wife to come back from hell and into this stitched up corpse, so that way he's so crazed, and he manipulated Saint Germain because he was that lady in the infinite corridor, not his girlfriend but the other woman he bumped into, and he manipulating things on Saint Germain's side in order to get him to resurrect Dracula. And because if him and his wife are in the same body, he would probably go crazy and go on a mass murdering spree, and he'll just feed off of that. But thanks to Trevor's skill, another awesome fight scene of the show, took down the Grim Reaper. Of course, it's probably just neutralize him. You can't really get rid of death, but at least we put a stop to his machinations. Trevor seemingly dead, but he found a couple weeks later, because Saint Germain, before he died after the explosion to destroy that homunculus body, the last bit of strength pulled Trevor into the infinite corridor in order to have him go through another door that he must time travels him 2 weeks in the future, so that way he can avoid the catastrophic explosion. And you find out that Cypher is pregnant. Everything's all hunky-dory. And then epilogue, where you see that despite the whole corpse body thing, Dracula and Lisa return back to the land of the living. They found, they go into this inn where they rested up. They mentioned that they, found themselves in a field a few days ago, naked, but they're alive again. So now they just don't want to bother their son right away. They just want to just spend time together and just enjoy the moment. And that was Castlevania season 1 through 4, the Trevor Belmont Saga, all together. It's a lot. It's coming up in 2 hours. I try to cover as much ground as possible. It's always brilliantly brilliantly set up sections where I can just go point by point by point. But everything's this is fantastic. There's certain things I kind of wish there was a little bit more explanation to. And I kind of wish Lenore didn't have to die, because, kind of like her and, Hector to be together. Because you're talking about, cool love interest. Those two are just phenomenal together. But, of course, I love Dracula and Lisa's, their relationship together. The camp woman and Alucard, I want to see, because, I'll get into Nocturne in a minute, but it's I want to see how that turned out. And then, of course, Trevor and Cypher, their relationship, they're cute together, and I love how they just poke fun at each other. That's what couples tend to need to do. If you're in a relationship long enough, you make jokes with each other. I remember making jokes with my ex tons of times. She is annoyed by half of that stuff, but it's just fun. It's just fun jabs, just to show that you care. But that's it. But I'll have this up on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/talkativecarl, later on in the week. Follow me in links in the description below. Like this video if you're watching this on YouTube. Like it, share it with your friends, comment. But if you're not following me on Twitch already, please follow me on Twitch. As I'm go live, you'll find out on my Twitter handle @talkativecarl. And of course, you can check out my Patreon, where you can put in certain requests for certain reviews that you want me to do. You can check out the tier list system. But yeah, I will see you guys in a few minutes talking about Nocturne. That'll be a little bit faster than this. But after that, I'll be covering a Marvel comic, Blade, which also should be relatively short. And like I said, in a couple of days from now, I'll be covering the Blade movies. Well, I'll checking out the Blade movies, but in like 2-3 days, I'll probably do a review. But anyway, I'll see y'all in a few minutes. Take care.